Hey, good morning. Pete from North Las Vegas. Decided to give New Frontier a try. They do their own machining, and this is pretty much exclusively made here in Las Vegas. And some of you might already noticed, where's the serial number? Well, that's one of the first things they do a little different. So they put it on the other side. I really don't care if you see my serial number or not. What are you going to do with it? Okay, so I was kind of interested, and I thought that this might make a halfway decent video, is just to compare the New Frontier Armory with some of my other lowers. And this is just going to be a visual inspection. I'm not going to blueprint these things. I'm not going to measure a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to pin gauge things out, but we'll just try to see how many little differences we can pick up on between the machine work on the lower receivers. So up here we have an Anderson. A lot of people like to call the poverty pony. Palmetto State Armory, Aero Precision, Windham Weaponry. So I think we'll start off with the front here and try to see what the machining differences are and how the mag well looks from the front. So we'll get these all set up together and try to get them as close together as possible. Okay, so this will be a front view of the machining. I measured all the takedown pin tabs, and they're all in spec. All the pins are tight, but we're just kind of taking a look at the machining differences. So on the left is Aero Precision, then Anderson. Next one is Palmetto State Armory and Windham Weaponry, and then New Frontier Armory. Some of the differences I noticed is the mag well machining is definitely different between all of them, and the amount of cut and how straight this area is different on all of them. And I would say that New Frontier Armory wins. If you look at the machining on the mag well, and this is nice here, this radius cut. So from a front view, New Frontier Armory looks pretty good compared to the others. Okay, so let's do a top view, and we'll try to see if there's anything noteworthy there. Okay, so that's Aero Precision, Anderson, Palmetto, Windham, and New Frontier. Okay, so as far as the mag wells, the broach cut and everything inside, they look very, very similar. I didn't really see anything sticking out to me that way. The Windham receiver thickness here looks a little bit thinner material compared to the other ones. And that just maybe could be because of the camera angle, I'm not sure. But it looks like the Windham has a little bit less meat on the mag well area. And the New Frontier Armory is pretty thick. I'd say as thick as the others, maybe slightly thicker. Okay, so one of the things I did notice was on the Aero Precision here, you got some extra meat. On the Anderson, you've got some extra meat. And you'll see here on the Palmetto, they've machined that a little bit narrower. And then this is the Windham. And then the New Frontier did the same thing. They put kind of a narrower cut in that area. Okay, so one of the things I noticed is on this Aero Precision, now this could be the buffer too, it may not be the receiver or the extension tubes, but you'll notice the protrusion on the buffers. So on the arrow, that buffer's sticking out quite a bit. Now, like, all these rifles work great, so there's no issues about function. And that's the Anderson, Palmetto, Windham, once again the Frontier Armory, and they did stake the castle nut. All right, well, let's do some side views. Okay, so I was looking at the side view here, the left side, and I didn't really see anything jumping out at me as far as machining differences. How things are marked are different. One of my pet peeves on ARs is this area right here. A lot of times these won't be symmetrical. Like on this arrow, they're pretty close to the same width. You can see the rear one is a little bit narrower and this is a little bit wider, but this is actually pretty good compared to a lot of ARs that I have. And here's the Anderson. Anderson looks pretty good. Palmetto looks really good. And the Windham is probably the worst. You can see how much narrower this is than the front. And like I said, it's just a pet peeve. And then you can see the Frontier Armory. There's a little bit of a difference, but not too bad. I'd say the Windham has the most discrepancy. So as far as markings go, the Aero Precision uses the Pictos and no full auto marking. Anderson, man, they use some big lettering on their receivers. We'll compare that to the Palmetto. You see how much smaller the lettering is for safe and fire. And the smallest is the Windham Weaponry. They use very, very small lettering. And the new Frontier Armory uses Picto, but they also mark the full autos. And they also have a little 45-degree tick mark on both sides. And when we get to the other side. So we're mainly focused on the receivers, but I'll talk about some of the differences. This is a mil spec, and it's got a very heavy pull. I'd say around 7-8 pounds, but it's very, very smooth. It's not notchy. It doesn't hang up. There's not a bunch of slop in it. It's just a really nice smooth pull, even though it's a little bit heavy. It's mil spec. And this is the Windham Weaponry. It's got a mil spec WW, and it's a pretty good trigger too. And I put Timneys in the this Palmetto Timney AR trigger in there, and that's a mil spec, and that's a Wilson Combat, and that's a very nice trigger. I really like that trigger. Okay, so when we did top view, something I forgot to talk about, Aero Precision machines in a set screw, a tensioning set screw. Let me see if I can get a better shot of that. You can see the tip of the green sticking up in there, down inside there. So what you're looking at, sorry about the camera work, is you're looking at this. And Aero Precision machines all of their receivers to accept that tensioning screw. If there's any slop between your upper and lower, you have to take your pistol grip off to make the adjustment. So once you've made the adjustment with your set screw, you're kind of married to that upper. And this is something also that New Frontier Armory does. And they machine the hole. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. You can see the hole in there, but when I picked the receiver up, I asked him, I said, hey, isn't there supposed to be a set screw in there? And he said, yeah. So he gave me this. And then he asked me, he says, we can pop the handle off the pistol grip real quick and install it if you want. I said, no, just go ahead and leave it out. I said, I'm going to be putting it on top of a Windham Weaponry Upper, and it may be a snug tight fit already anyway. We'll see. I said, so we won't worry about installing it right now, but they did give me one. Okay, so we'll talk about buttstocks real quick. PRS Magpul. This is an SLK, and that's a standard SL. Now these things look almost identical, but the L does not come with a QD. I installed that myself. What you're going to get is you'll just get a slot for it to go in there. So if you really want a minimalist buttstock, this is the SLK from Magpul, and this is their SL. SL comes with a QD and an extra slot for your sling, but otherwise they're pretty much identical. Standard A2, and when you buy a complete lower from Frontier, you get a B5 buttstock. Now these I don't really care for these too much, and sometimes if you're putting your fist back here, or you're resting this on something like you're bench resting, or maybe in a prone position, and you're trying to get the buttstock centered in your shoulder and get everything set up. On some of my M4 style buttstocks, you can disengage this, and then when you fire the rifle, you know your buttstock's going to move. So I don't care for the external adjustment lever. I like the Magpul better. It sits inside where it's much harder to inadvertently or accidentally disengage your buttstock. So that's one of the design features about the Magpul I like better. Now, in B5's defense, this has a very stiff spring loading, and you really got to put a lot of pressure on it. Some of my other M4 buttstocks, I mean, you just barely touch that and it'll disengage the buttstock. So in this case here, this B5, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I just thought I'd mention that. Okay, so we're taking a look at the right side. I should have mentioned this on the top view segment, but if you see right where I'm pointing the light, you can see that area where they machined the top of the receiver, and that's the Aero Precision, and that's the Anderson, Palmetto, Windham, and now you can see on this Frontier Armory, they really machine that out right to the edge of the receiver. So that is a difference. I'm not saying it's an issue, I'm just saying it's, a machining difference. All right, well, let's get back to the side view. We're looking at the right side now. Once again, the new Frontier Armory has the Pictos with the full auto. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, they put the serial number on the side of the receiver instead of the mag well. And I couldn't really see any big, huge differences, other than there's a little bit of a machining indentation here. And other than that, I really didn't notice much else. The one thing I will say that all of New Frontier Armory's pins, not just the takedown pins, but the trigger group have dimples, and this is dimpled on both sides, and these come dimpled. Some of my other builds, like this one here, the Windham Weaponry, that's all OEM pins, and nothing's dimpled on the Windham Weaponry. They're all flat faced. And I use CMMG on this this Palmetto here. So and I use K&S Precision for the trigger pins. That's the Anderson Aero Precision. And you might have noticed that most of my rifles have the standard A2 pistol grips. I know a lot of people seem to have a problem with those. They don't like them, but they don't bother me at all. Okay, so that's the side-by-side receiver comparisons. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the new Frontier Armory, and I'll show you what it's going to go on. Okay, so I thought I'd put the rifles back together. Some of you might be curious as to what all these lowers go to. This is the Aero Precision. And this rifle is a laser beam. Uses a Criterion barrel. Everything else is Aero Precision. This is the Anderson lower I was showing. And the whole top end is Windham Weaponry. It's a heavy barrel dissipator. And this is a Palmetto dissipator, and this is all Palmetto. And this has a mid-length gas system. And I forgot to mention the Windham uses a standard carbine length gas system. So carbine, mid-length. And this is the Windham Weaponry I was showing. And it's an A2 government. Okay, so when I went into New Frontier Armory last Friday morning, right when they opened up, I was actually looking for a stripped lower, not a complete lower. They were out of stock. So I asked the guy, I said, hey, can you tell me when you're going to get some more strip lowers? And he said he couldn't tell me. He could make a phone call and maybe get some idea, but he said he couldn't say for sure. So I said, okay. So I saw this one after tax, background checks, all the fees, out the door, for $198. So I got this complete lower for $200. That's out the door. So seeing how they didn't have a strip lower, I just said, okay, well, I'll get this for now. I went ahead and ordered a stripped Palmetto State Armory, which should be here tomorrow or Tuesday. But the original plan was to get this in a stripped lower, and I was going to go A2 rifle with it. And that was the original plan. But this is all going to go on the Palmetto lower now. And I'm just going to have two lowers for this brand new upper that I built. And that's a Windham Weaponry Upper receiver, unmarked Aero Precision bolt carrier group, DPMS carry handle, Radian charging handle, Midwest Industries 2-piece drop-in. And that's a Rock River Arms wild chambering 1-in-9 twist. Not 1-in-8, 1-in-9 twist, and a heavy barrel. So originally I was going to turn this into a serious Franken A3, A4 clone, but nothing worked out the way I planned it. So anyway, we're going to put this on here for now, and then like I said, I'll just have a separate lower when the Palmetto State Armory comes in for this particular rifle. So I guess this thing's going to be called a Carful or a Ribene. I don't know. Let's see what it looks like with the lower on there. Okay, so I'm going to go with Carful, because that's easier to say than Ribene. And then when I get my A2 standard lower put together, we'll just go back to calling it a rifle. I'm not going to put the set screw in because it's a very snug, tight fit. There's barely any movement at all between this upper and lower combination. And so we'll bypass this thing. Okay, well, that's my new build. Rock River Arms barrel. And kind of a visual receiver comparison. Pete in North Las Vegas. Over and out.